Now, as promised, Richard Fitzpatrick is with us, football writer. Books include El Clasico, Barcelona versus Real Madrid, football's greatest rivalry, and then more recently, HH, Helenio Herrera, football's original master of the dark arts. Richard, you're very welcome. Good to talk to you.
Thanks for having me on, Joe.
Florentino Perez. So I think we're all pretty familiar with Florentino at this stage. His 2000 to '06 stint at Madrid was the Galactico era, and then he went away for 3 years, and he's been back since '09. And as we know, it's been an extraordinary period of success at Real Madrid. However, this season, added to last season, will now make it 2 years running without a major trophy. And he called a press conference on Monday afternoon at short notice, which is unusual. I mean, people maybe thought, is it a new managerial announcement? But generally that's done by statement, I was reading, as opposed to a Florentino Perez press conference. And it certainly wasn't that. He didn't really want to discuss sporting matters. He launched, for kind of Trumpian in a way, a 90-minute borderline soliloquy defense of himself, of his health at 79. That seems to have been an issue in the Spanish press. He raged against journalists. He raged against La Liga, and sort of signed off by, I'm calling elections and I'm going nowhere.
Yeah, exactly. It was a huge shock. He just announced that there was going to be a press release around 2 hours before it. It wasn't so much that people were only given 2 hours to prepare for it. There was this surprise. It was just the very fact of him calling a press conference. The last one was, I think, 2015. He just doesn't show his face to the media. He did a bit of a media tour at the time he launched the Super League. He was the president, or the face of the abortive Super League in 2021. But he did those couple of interviews essentially in local media, because it was Madrid media in Spain for a project that was supposed to be European based. But so it was a big shock that he was putting himself in front of the cameras. And the rumors mill was all about, gosh, Florentino's going to resign. He's going to be 80 next year. 2 seasons, as you say, trophyless, or in blanco, white. It isn't good for Real Madrid, but he came out swinging in the press conference. But it was a shambolic performance. I mean, he wouldn't have calmed the nerves of Real Madrid's fans by his behaviour at the press conference. He was very muddled. He was repeating himself. He was shuffling his papers, jumping between these typewritten notes and his or his smartphone. Kept banging the microphone, and then the thing was, as you say, it was the victimismo, the victim complex. He was railing against all these perceived enemies, like King Lear on the heath, like a madman. But he also just let the mask slip. Florentino is a very private person. He's very cunning, very clinical, and he doesn't put himself in front of the media for obvious reasons. He operates in the shadows and is very successful at that way. He operates, but the person that presented himself at the press conference was, very machista, very ugly persona that was presented. So then last night, we're chatting now on Thursday. That press conference was Tuesday. On Wednesday night at 9 o'clock prime time, he went on La Sexta, and he got a softball interview by one of his supporters. We could talk about that. But so it's been an incredible 2 days
Wow.
just to see Florentino show face like this.
Okay. I'll come back to that interview on La Sexta in a minute. So I mean, that is Trumpian in a way, like this shambolic, muddled, repeating himself performance for 90 minutes. Like, some of the quotes were, I'm here to stay, I'm not going anywhere. Like, it's even Jordan Belfort, Leonardo DiCaprio style. That's what I'm seeing here. I'm here to stand for election. And if someone does want to stand for election, this is your opportunity, but don't move in the shadows with publications and news outlets. So obviously he feels people are briefing against him. He said, I'm not in bed, I'm not unwell. I've come out to sit here because as Real Madrid president, I can't allow journalists to do what they do. I work hard, I'm up early, and I'm the last to go to bed. I understand there's frustration out there. But if people have forgotten, we have won 37 titles since I've been in charge. So he was obviously very keen to allay rumours reporting that his health was failing.
Yeah, 100%. I think he's a very thin-skinned guy. Like, I think he was genuinely hurt by the rumors that he had cancer. That affected him. You could see that from the way he kept returning to it. Rumors that he'd lost energy from sources close to him had leaked this, and that he had terminal cancer, and his friends were calling him and saying, "Hey, are you okay? Do you have cancer?" His wife died 2012, I think it was. He was very close to her, and she'd been battling lung cancer for years. I think she technically died from a heart attack, but it was kind of her immune system would have been down and stuff. But so it just on the Trumpian thing, it definitely his display was Trumpian in that he was jumping around the place and he was very defensive. But he's nothing like Trump. This guy is an incredibly successful businessman. He bought a construction company for a peseta in 1983, and it's a multi-billion dollar global construction business nowadays. Like he referenced this in his speech on Tuesday. It generates 50 billion in revenue every year, 150,000 employees. While he runs that, he also does his sideshow, which is Real Madrid. And he has been incredibly successful both in financial terms and in dragging the club out of debt.
Yeah.
And then obviously on the pitch, as we all know, 6 Champions League trophies in the last dozen years. But
so why the disquiet, or I mean, and how widespread were the reports of ill health? I appreciate 2 trophyless seasons at Real Madrid is more than a crisis, but he would surely have a fair degree of credit in the bank. No, like where's all this coming from? The briefing against him, is it from potential political opponents? Is it just unhappiness in the Madrid press, or what's kind of the backdrop here?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of factors. The club is definitely under pressure because, yeah, he has credit in the bank, but as you know, Real Madrid, you need to win every season. That's the motto. The club just 100% focuses on success. Nothing else matters. The last 2 weeks have been extraordinary, and nobody can recall events like it in living memory. The fights, especially the fight between Valverde and Tchouaméni. Valverde left the dressing room in a wheelchair. The coach, Alvaro Arbeloa, isn't talking to 6 players, including his captain, Dani Carvajal. You've the problem with Mbappe being on holidays mid-season in Italy while while the ship is sinking. Landing back in Madrid, 600 miles away from Barcelona, where his teammates were playing Espanyol, about to kick off against Espanyol in La Liga. So there's all that trouble, and Florentino mentioned this at several points, that there's all this noise about Madrid, that there's chaos in Madrid, that Madrid is sinking. So he wanted to address those concerns, okay. And this is why he came out to bat.
I see at one point as well, or at several points rather, so he had sheets in front of me and he had his phone, and he would very dramatically take out his phone and read aloud excerpts from critical articles directly, naming journalists, naming the newspapers, and then the journalists in the room, some of them push back. So all of that was going on. And then as tends to happen, there's a moment which has gone viral where he read an article by a female journalist and then questioned her understanding of football, and then turned to another journalist at another point, a female, and said, well, let's let her ask because you men are all ugly. And I presume he at 79 thought that was kind of a charming compliment. This is just something, a gentleman here. Let the lady ask. You're all ugly.
Yeah.
But all of that, I suppose, feeds into a man whose time is coming to an end, perhaps.
Yeah. It's a measure of he's just losing his touch. He called her a girl,
Yeah.
very dismissive. The irony is that Florentino was railing. His number one problem, he said, was that there's an organized campaign against Real Madrid, i.e., the media is against Real Madrid, and it's concocting all these stories about his own demise for health reasons and the club's demise. But he operates in an in an extraordinary media environment that is completely docile and servile towards him. He owns the media. It was amazing. So this press conference is going on. He talks for about 40 minutes, then fields questions for another 30 or 40 minutes. And while the press conference was going on, he had come out complaining about ABC. That's a newspaper here in Spain, and complaining about an article in it. And he started rambling about how he was going to cancel his subscription, and even though it was his father who got him the subscription, but he wanted to honor his father by doing the right thing. And in the middle of the press conference, group of Vocento is the holding group of that newspaper. The president of that company announced his resignation. This is
Wow.
the way things operate in Spain.
Just
Florentino's
on foot of Perez threatening maybe to withdraw a subscription.
exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
It's
He
extraordinary.
go he goes on, as I mentioned, we could chat about the La Sexta
Yeah.
interview.
So Le Sexta is this is these infamous late night TV and radio shows which are so popular in Spain, and I presume is it the dude I'm thinking of with the gravelly voice
Yeah,
and the dramatic
exactly.
music? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And
Joseph
the down the
Pedro.
lens kind of soliloquies. That dude.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
that exactly El Chiringuito, and
Yeah.
he doubles up. He was brought in for this interview on La Sexta. Yeah, yeah,
Okay. He's
a very
super
guy.
popular. I saw he's got like 2 million Twitter followers, for instance.
Oh
He's a big
yeah.
voice in football.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think he's more in entertainment than football.
Okay.
He's great. Yeah, he's great. He's great value, but obviously not 100% objective. So, I mean, it was a huge softball interview. They trailed the interview with footage of Florentino arriving, dramatically,
Yeah.
chauffeur-driven car, gets out of the car, meets Pedro in the foyer, and big bear hug. They go in then and sit down, and it wasn't Jeremy Paxman. What
Okay.
lies is this lying bastard telling me? It was he was calling him Prezi, shorthand for president, and this is the Florentino I know, not the guy we saw yesterday.
Oh, so there was an acknowledgement in that softball La Sexta interview that the press conference yesterday had not gone well.
Yeah. He gently walked him through some of the points. Like Perez got to reiterate his attacks on La Liga, on Barca, namely to do with the Negreira case, the refereeing scandal. And say he said, look, people have been saying you're machista, and he said he kind of dissembled, and he said, look, I just called her a girl. What's wrong with that? I was just trying to bring her into the conversation. So he brushed it off, but he was a lot more measured. It was, I mean, the press conference was, he got diabolical advice going into it. He shouldn't have done it, because he went out and he stood at a table on his own, and his press officer tried to cut short the press conference at several stages, saying
Mm.
that's enough questions. But he just kept carrying on, kept digging him a hole. So a one-on-one interview is, as you know yourself, is always better. It's easier to manage or perform. So
Yeah.
it was an adequate performance.
Okay, so maybe it calms the fires a touch. As for the
Yeah.
presidency, I think people are generally au fait with the criteria these days around being president of Real Madrid. For instance, you have to be Spanish, you have to be a member of the club for 20 plus years. And I suppose the crucial point is, I think you have to have 15% of Madrid turnover, almost as a kind of a
Exactly.
guarantee of sorts. In your personal assets, like you can't go to a bank or get back in from
Yeah,
from a
yeah.
group where you could say, listen, we want you to be our guy, and so we're going to put that 15% forward. It has to be in your personal assets. So as of 2026, you need to have 190 odd million euro in the bank to just run as president. I
Yeah.
presume Perez this is a recent thing. This 15% is as he kind
Yeah,
of
exactly.
yeah.
He brought it in. He adjusted the legislation at the club. It used to be it was 10%, and I think
Right.
I'm not sure about this, but I think you could have had, like in Barcelona, you could have had a group of financial backers, and it was membership for 10 years, I think.
Right.
I don't think the Spanish nationality was an issue, but most Real Madrid members would be Spanish.
So naturally in 25, 21, 2017, 2013, and '09, he was the sole candidate.
Yeah.
And presumably, I mean, I saw Enrique Riquelme being
Yeah, he
mentioned,
was.
and who Perez didn't refer to by name as another potential candidate, but said that man talking to the big electric companies with a South American accent. I don't really
Mm.
understand what he's getting at there.
Yeah, that was a slur. Like in Spain, it's quite a racist country, and in my experience, covering just racism in football, you will all be familiar with the Vinicius case over the last few years. It's been horrendous, and Lamine Yamal gets a lot of racism. So that guy is a derogatory term for South Americans. They look down on South Americans. Here in Spain, I would say my wife is Venezuelan, but not nothing to do with her. But that is the case. So he was being dismissive of Riquelme, who's actually from Alicante in the south of Spain. He has business interests in Mexico. That's why he said he's got a Mexican accent, but he was just running him down. So as regards the presidential election, uh, Florentino's plan is, to clear the air and, say, look, I'm very democratic. We're going to run an election. Whoever wants to stand against me, let them put their hat in the ring.
Mm.
But uh, Riquelme, for example, has written an open letter to Mark asking for more time to run. He wanted to run, I think it was back in 2021, or maybe it was a good few years ago. And he didn't have enough time, so Florentino was put back in unopposed. So, I mean, he can't run an election race in 10 or 14 days. Like, it's not practical.
Okay. So do you think
So
is that what was behind Perez saying, right, let's have an election now, not to almost ambush him?
to ambush him, yeah.
Okay.
But Florentino doesn't have anything to fear. Like, there's no way he would be ousted.
Right.
Like, Real Madrid fans rightly have great regard for him. I mean, he's as we just touched on, he's been incredibly successful. We could go into the detail on football and financial terms, but also. All football clubs are very tribal, and football fans love a guy who defends their honor. And Florentino is the biggest
Okay.
ultra sore in the club.
So, so if he's not under like significant real threat, Perez, this really was just a thin-skinned. I mean, it's I don't know, rude and call it a tantrum, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
There was no kind of strategic aspect to this, which was really served.
no, it wasn't. He's been become increasingly paranoid over the last few years. I mean, this is his behavior. There was leaked audio tapes, like confidential leaked audio tapes go back to 2012, where he spoke really vulgarly about ex-players like Ronaldo, saying he was an imbecile, and Raúl was a fraud and all this kind of stuff. He speaks in he can be really vulgar, and what has happened over the last couple of years is that his sense of judgment is going, like, if you take the scandal over the Ballon d'Or awards
Yeah,
2 years ago, you remember when he boycotted
yeah.
over Vinicius not winning ahead of Rodri. He was sending a message to Vinicius. Look, it's okay to be a diva. I'm going to nurture your diva complex. And obviously, we've had a lot of problems with Vinicius's behavior since then, most noticeably in his relationship with Xabi Alonso. When he was coach, he's having trouble with his stadium. He did the big rebuild, and he had great plans for concerts there to be held every 6 days. And a residence committee in the neighborhood. The Bernabeu is centered in one of the richest neighborhoods in the city with a lot of well-connected people. They've galvanized, they've organized a residence committee. They stopped the concerts. They were saying that the stadium was turned into a torture drome. They've also put a stop to his plans for two car parks and a tunnel underneath the Bernabeu Stadium. The club has lost about 16 million already in money it's put into that project. So he's losing his grip a bit, and his public displays are kind of are displaying that kind of that collapse.
Interesting. And so, in the midst of all this, he has said, Jose Mourinho is my guy.
Yeah, yeah. Arriving on a white horse, yeah, to save the day. Um, yeah, it's going to be box office. I mean, Jose is Mourinho. He's obviously yesterday's man. If you look at the trajectory of his career, extraordinary for the first 15 years. Serial winner, as he would say himself, but he hasn't won a league title since Chelsea's in 2015. Um, we know his kind of playbook. He comes in, he does well towards the start, and then it just leaves bonfires all over the house. It was an extraordinary 3 years when he was manager of Real Madrid from 2010 to 2013. He inflamed. He's one of the great eight figures of the classical rivalry over a century of that rivalry. Most noticeably, I guess that incident with Tito Villanova, who's Barca's head coach or assistant coach in 2011, when he poked him in the eye. I remember a couple of weeks after that incident, Real Madrid's Ultras Sur, their hooligan brigade in the south stand, had a huge tifo saying, "Mourinho, your finger points us the way." But it's interesting and telling that Florentino loved Jose Mourinho. He kept him in the job for 3 years. He's already been citing, Mourinho brought back the competitiveness to that Real Madrid team. They hadn't qualified. They hadn't won a Champions League knockout game in several years when he came in 2010, and he got them to three semi-finals in a row. So Mourinho will have that in his favour, that Florentino is a fan. As we know, Florentino doesn't respect coaches, but he's a grudging respect for Mourinho, and he just enjoyed his bolshy behaviour when he was in charge that time.
He's inheriting a very talented dressing room, there's no doubt. But what is your sense of the human aspect to that dressing room at the moment? Maybe start with Mbappe, like this huge petition against him. Is he being talked about like openly in the press as a toxic figure in there and a bad professional? Not just the trip away, obviously, but just in general terms, is he kind of been deemed a toxic presence? Because I even saw on La Sexta, Perez was asked, like, would you sell Mbappe? So even that question is being asked is very telling.
Yeah, he definitely hasn't endeared himself to the public in Madrid. They're playing tonight in La Liga at home at the Bernabeu, and on the 10th minute there's going to be whistles jeering against Mbappe. He obviously wears the number 10 jersey. He's just a cold fish because it's kind of enigmatic. He's a very intelligent guy and charming in his own way, but he has not endeared himself to Madridistas. I mean, you can't fault his performances on the pitch. Golden Boot winner in Europe last year, 41 goals in 41 games this season, in a team that's struggling ostensibly. But he's doesn't have many friends in the Real Madrid dressing room, apart from a clique of players around him, like Chouameni. It doesn't get on with Bellingham. Obviously, there's a clash in personalities there with Vinicius Junior and himself, for footballing terms, and who as regards who's the boss of the team.
Right.
When he in his first season with Real Madrid, they used to alternate in calling out his name or Vinicius's name at the end of the team lineup, and the last player would get the biggest cheer. But that he now has that slot. He takes the penalties, as Johan Cruyff used to say, "A ship can't have two captains." So. But Florentino, he's Florentino's man, I don't see him leaving this summer. But there is a big problem there in accommodating both himself and Vinicius. So he has work to do with just endearing himself to Madridismo. But winning football games, trophies will fix all of that once that happens.
That's fascinating about the billing. So I hadn't realised that. So the Madrid stadium announcer would alternate between Vinicius and Mbappe. So last would get the biggest cheer. But now Mbappe has won that war, so he's just the designated last name being read out. So I mean, something like that doesn't happen without maybe agents involved, without Perez involved. Like that's a whole saga to reach that kind of a conclusion.
I know. Yeah, yeah. Oh, look, and the buck stops with Florentino. He makes all those
Yeah.
decisions. So. Yeah, ideally they need to build the team around one of those two players. They have Rodrigo as well, who's arguably as good as Vinicius Junior. But
what's the Bellingham beef with Mbappe? Just not a meeting of minds or some specific issue?
yeah, just clash of personalities. They also Bellingham was sensational in that first season with Real Madrid, obviously concluding in 2024 with a Champions League trophy and a La Liga double, and he was scoring goals for fun, playing in this false nine role. But then Mbappe came in, and in order to accommodate him and keep Vinny Junior on the left, they've had Mbappe in that central role. So Bellingham has been out of sorts since. It's really stark, the drop in his form.
Yeah, I'm not surprised though, because even like there's times where Bellingham, even when they're winning the Champions League final against Dortmund, that was under Ancelotti. And that was a period where, like, Vinicius is just like, I'm not tracking back. I'm just not. I mean, you can tell me to, but it's not going to happen. And like Bellingham goes from that false nine free scoring, supernova for that first year to like, yeah, Jude, even though it's not your position at all, you're just going to have to sit left wing in a kind of 4-4-2 shape here when we don't have the ball and just shuttle up and down and just be almost kind of just a body in there. So I'm sure for him, kind of. He was reduced to that. Like, and they won the Champions League final, so, that papers over a lot of cracks. But I'm sure he was thinking, I'm not a left winger. I'm a lot of things. I'm not a left winger.
Yeah, it's a big conundrum how to fit the pieces of the jigsaw together. It's kind of the problem every coach would like. We say, or people say, oh God, who would be crazy enough to manage Real Madrid? But Carlo Ancelotti ran out the door of Goodison Park to get back to Real Madrid when the chance fell in his lap again in 2021, was it?
Yeah.
So the raw material is incredible. You've Arda Güler as well. Like you've great players in that squad, so it's just getting the pieces together to fit together and to just motivate them, to have the authority to manage that dressing room. I think it was really interesting watching Xabi Alonso, and I think it highlighted how incredible a coach Carlo Ancelotti was, or still is. That Xabi Alonso failed. He was only there 6 months, more or less. But he couldn't master that dressing room, and they weren't playing good football either. So it was really interesting to watch him fail in that way. But some people have it and others don't. For that dressing room.
Oh, so interesting on so many levels. I mean, it was very striking. I thought when Gareth Bale did that big interview in the Overlap recently, and he said he knew when Alonso was going in, a systems coach, that it just wouldn't work. He just knew it's just not how we do things there. That dressing room's almost a unique ecosystem. Last one, the Valverde Tchouaméni fight, very dramatic. Is it like, is this a combustible, unhappy dressing room in general terms? Like we've kind of baked in the fact that Bellingham and Mbappe and certain players won't like each other, and that's probably true in a lot of dressing rooms. But physical violence and leaving in wheelchairs is a whole other level. Is this like is it kind of is Mourinho about to enter a fairly toxic situation?
Yeah, he is, but I mean that dressing room is always difficult to manage. It was, known as the Ferrari boys in the 90s. There's always there. It's the club of the Galacticos. You have huge egos, and it's a question of managing those egos. They had a brilliant esprit de corps in the 2023-2024 season. It was, we remember that photo of Carlo Ancelotti and the team bus going around the city celebrating with the cigar in his mouth. The players loved him and they were getting on well. I think what's missing since then is, apart from whoever's coach, but you've lost a lot of senior players like Nacho, Lucas Vasquez, Spanish guys, Modric, Toni Kroos, especially.
Yeah.
Huge influence, just quiet leaders. It's a dressing room of kids, or they're all in their mid-20s. Bellingham is still only, it's a 23 maybe now. They're all young guys, arrogant and that, and there is a dearth of kind of natural leadership in the dressing room. So that's a problem. There will be a clear out in the summer, but yeah, let's see. Maybe Mourinho can galvanize them. I mean, he is a good man. One-on-one, people say he's an excellent man manager.
Yeah.
So he could galvanize them, and I think La Liga as well it's effectively a two-horse race. So it's them and Barca, and Barca are going for a historic three in a row. It's only been done twice before in 100 years of La Liga by Barca. So it's not an easy thing to do. And Real Madrid were top of La Liga as recently as late February. The wheels can come off at Barca very quickly. For me personally, the abiding memory of Barca this season was Hansi Flick in the dugout after a game against Alaves in tears, and Rafinha was consoling him. He was just distraught about the lack of pressing. So things could suddenly turn around for Real Madrid, although a lot of work to be done over the summer.
Yeah, for sure. On Barcelona, as you said, two titles in a row. For all that it's a two-horse race, that doesn't happen very often in La Liga either, two in a row. So for Hansi Flick, it's a crowning achievement. I think he said Real Madrid have done it once in 36 years, is what Flick said. I didn't get a chance to double check that. But
Florentino says if it wasn't for the Negreira case, they would have won another 7 titles. So.
Well, but he's done it with this very young side, average age 24, 25, and the younger players, seem to really be enthralled to him and like him.
Yeah.
I wanted to get your sense on the ground of the reaction to Lamine Yamal. We were just talking about it earlier on the show. A fairly extraordinary thing for an 18-year-old to do, to hold the Palestinian flag on the open top bus parade. 750,000 people out in the streets. He then posted a picture of him holding the flag on Instagram. Insofar as I can tell, it's the first time that he's done that. We are talking about the natural heir to Messi and Ronaldo. He will be, for a time, probably for a good chunk of his career, the best player in the world. He's likely to have a huge World Cup. And it was striking. We played the audio earlier. Hansi Flick said, well, I told him not to do it. I thought, well, there's a strength of character here when your manager is saying, look, don't do this. So it was a very brave thing to do. You could say it's the exuberance of youth. Who knows? And he may come to regret the backlash, because I'm sure there will be a backlash of some sort. But it was a very striking thing for such a high-profile player to do. It's rare. Could you give us a sense of Yamal, the person, in so much as we know how politically minded he is? I know he's a Muslim. What's going on here? Are we expecting more of this? Did this come out of nowhere? Like I said, it just was popped up on the other evening. I thought, wow, I haven't seen anything like this before from him.
Yeah, it was amazing. A very brave thing to do. Hansi Flick criticized him essentially for it, as you say. It is a kind of just shut up and bounce attitude from Flick, to paraphrase LeBron James criticism going back 12 or 14 years ago, for athletes getting involved in politics. As you say, he's only 19 maybe
18, yeah.
now, 18. Very brave. Yeah, but 19 in July, very brave thing for him to do. He is he has been very politically aware. There was Spain were playing in Cornellà in Espanyol Stadium back in March, the end of March, and there was anti-Muslim chanting in the stadium, and he came out decrying it after the game. So he is very politically conscious, and there's been rejoicing in Catalonia, very pro-Palestine region, and in Spain, very pro-Palestine country. It's been very vocal in its criticism of what it calls the genocide in Israel, that Israel has been carrying out. So he has been widely applauded for taking a stand like this. He gets a lot of, I mentioned earlier, gets a lot of racist abuse in Spanish football stadiums as well. He's been always very articulate when he talks in the media, not afraid to sit down and talk at press conferences. So far he's just proved himself to be a very impressive young man, and not his background isn't ideal. His father is quite a problematic figure. He's been in trouble and stuff. But Lamine is, just he hasn't put a foot wrong.
Right.
So far, very impressive guy.
Okay. Because it's funny when I think of racist abuse in La Liga, not that it would just be consigned to Vinicius Junior alone, but he's almost the figure everyone thinks of. I didn't realize whatever about doing it to the Brazilian, who they mightn't see as one of their own, but to do it to the kid who's going to maybe try and win your country the World Cup in a few months, I didn't realize he was on the receiving end of that all the time.
Yeah, yeah. Oh gosh, he is. I'm pretty sure he statistically he has got more racist abuse in La Liga games this season than Vinicius Junior. It's a kind of tribal thing. Like just rival clubs will take on
Yeah.
their the opposition's star player. Um,
How has he handled it, Richard?
he's handled it well. He has. Like he's a different figure to Vinicius Junior in that Vinicius Junior is blamed for provoking it.
Yeah.
Lamine Yamal isn't a provocative player like that. He, it's interesting. He is the face of this new Spain, which is a beautiful story. Like himself and Nico Williams were the stars of that Spain team in the 2024 Euro victory. There's a great mural that was. I live in Barcelona, and I have an 8-year-old son. He was 6 at the time, and I remember taking him down to this mural down at the end of Diagonal, one of the big avenues that runs through the city. It was a mural of Nico Williams and Lamine Yamal, shoulder to shoulder. They're good friends. And so it's the new Spain, a team full of kids whose parents were immigrants. I mean, Nico Williams, the story of his parents' escape from Africa is incredible. But they are that face of the new Spain. But the Spanish national team is is a problematic topic in Spain. Not all the obviously Catalonia. Barca fans here in Catalonia don't they look at Spain out of the corner of their eye.
Sure.
They have a troubled relationship. To wave the Spain national flag in Catalonia is a political act. It links you with the far right. Even in Madrid, Atletico fans will tell you they don't really dig the Spain national team. They're Atletico fans first and foremost. So it's really Real Madrid fans that get behind the Spain team.
Okay.
Although, funnily enough, I don't think there will be a Real Madrid player in the Spain squad in the World Cup. Maybe Dean Howson, but he'd be just a support player.
Wow. That's actually unthinkable. Wow.
Mm.
Um, okay. Listen, Absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much for joining us, Richard Fitzpatrick. Real pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Joe.